Bone Spirit is nasty. One-hitting Uber bosses, 100 million plus damage with a spirit, speed farming the pit for material, and overall having the most fun Necromancer has to offer. We're going to break down the gear, and there's two versions, budget and the unique one, with Book of the Dead, skills, Paragon board, everything. Why is Bone Spirit suddenly good though? And that is because they added some temperings. First one up here is called Bone Spirit Cooldown Reduction, to truly be able to chain them in a row. And the second one would be Necromancer Invigoration. Casting Macabre skills restores primary resource, which means that after every cast, right, in that 1 second cooldown time, we're full. Ooh, we're full. Yeah. So you can one, then walk around, another, and so on. Now, how do we get the maximum amount of damage? That has three components. First, we need to spend 275 essence, because that brings us up to a guaranteed overpower critical strike. Why is that critical strike guaranteed? Oh, we're having 70.2% critical strike chance. That gets followed up by a bonus of 25% crit chance on Bone Spirit and another crit chance from the Bone Storm. With then also the Corpse Generals brings us up to 125% critical strike chance. It's guaranteed. Then you do need to curse for bonus curse and overpowered damage. And lastly, you make the Corpse Tendrils. First Corpse Tendrils, boop, and then suddenly that was 60 million hits. And then we do it again, and again, and there's 100 million. Important is that you do actually need a full amount of Fortify. And Fortify is currently made by creating corpses. So if I use my Blood Mist, I get Fortified, and if I use my Reap, I get Fortified, which then leads to me being able to do even more damage with the Bone Spirit. And it's an amazing loop when you're flying through the pit, because you can literally Blood Mist in, pull everyone together, activate your Bone Storm, which has an insane staying power due to your aspects, and then boom, 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 just hit him for the millions, millions, and millions. And the best part, in the pit boss fights, you have all the time in the world to use your spirit, step to the left, use your spirit, step to the left, avoid some of their attacks, dash through them, boom, 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 boom. The perfect rhythm to never get hit by anything, and at the same time, just deal out maximum hurt. The most important thing about the build is getting the cooldown low. And the breakpoint is kind of 8 seconds. That when you're critting, you get this 1 second going on, because the 1 second is all you need to get your essence back up. And I am not even perfectly masterworked yet to have my essence go up exactly the way I want it to. First, the skill tree, and something interesting changed here. It's called Bone Spirit is a core skill now. Which means if you're playing Unliving Energy and Imperfectly Balanced, your core skills cost 9 times more essence. Doesn't matter, it anyways uses every essence, but deals 15% more damage. We're also having Reap going on with Enhanced Reap and Acolyte's Reap to form corpses. This is very important. Reap, first and foremost, is a nice damage reduction, gives us bonus attack speed, but the corpse is for the Fortify that we need for the Overpower, because Overpower damage is life plus Fortify times Overpower multiplier. And that corpse is perfectly used for Corpse Tendrils as well. Which brings us into no core skill and currently Hood Flesh, so we make a little bit more corpses with our skills in between. These 2 points are variable though. Then 1 point into Blood Mist with making corpses. We're not really interacting with corpses, so no Grim Harvest and Fueled by Death. That's not true, we actually use some, but I'll get to that part. 3 points into Death Embrace, 4 points into Amplify Damage, and then the lucky hit, Abhorrent Decrepify, because you are lucky hitting in between to reduce some cooldown on your Bone Storm. All the points into Bone Spirit with the vulnerable of Corpse Tendrils, 3 points in Necrotic Carapace to get that Fortify we talked about. And technically you want the bonus critical strike chance if you're not at 100% Bone Spirit critical strike yet. Later you want to swap to Dreadful Bone Spirit for the bonus essence gain. 1 point into Serration, and this is where the 2 free points can go from Hood Flesh, because then with Serration up you have a higher critical strike chance. I'm over 100% already, so it doesn't matter. Very important is the 3 points in Rapid Ossification, because that is your cooldown reduction for the Bone Storm. With Standalone for the damage reduction, Memento Mori for the sacrifice bonuses, crit and bonus damage reduction from the Bone Storm, and bonus crit from Inspiring Leader, with lastly Ossified Essence. And how does the cooldown reduction now work? It's from spending essence. And since we're essentially spending essence, look at the cooldown here. It just goes down. And since we're enhancing the staying power of our Bone Storm, we're perfectly off during the duration of the Bone Storm to get this completely low and there it is up again. And that is exactly how it works in the dungeon as well. Plus the lucky hit from the Decrepify against the opponent, making it like it's still running, right? Boom. And I had the Bone Storm. I'll never run out of it. No matter of a boss fight, pushing minions, anything, Bone Storm is always active, always giving us barrier. And the reason for that is Osseous Gale. Bone Storm consumes up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by up to 12.5 seconds. That's fantastic. On top, we get Casting Macabre Skills restores plus 22 primary resource. Yes, and that gets higher the more you temper. Pretty good. Bone Spirit damage is nice, but you kind of want Bone Critical Strike damage instead, because your critical strike damage gets multiplied up, and then critical strike chance is mandatory. Another thing to get this increased is Bone Storm duration tempering on the weapon. Yes, 26.4% bonus Bone Storm duration. Fantastic. Bone Spirit damage is tempered here as well. Bone Critical Strike would be better. Critical Strike damage is needed, and you could actually go for overpower damage on the weapon too. Now the aspect would be Bone Spirit's critical strike chance is increased by 25%, and you get bonus essence if you hit things. That's more damage and 100% guaranteed critical strike. Now, one thing before I keep talking about the build, this is meant for speed farming the pin. I can do tier 80s, I can even do tier 90s, but tier 100s are just a pain and a drag, and they're not even enjoyable with this build. I would rather focus on speed farming 70s, 75, and 80s instead of pushing deeper with this build into the pin, because it can do every piece of content, yet it is not meant to go as deep as possible. It's just meant to farm those materials and get everything masterworked, or even collect the perfect gear for then the one-hit golem. Build is also in the description below. Then, very important, critical strikes with bone skills increase essence regeneration by 155%. There's an alternative to this one, and that would be the Shattered Spirit aspect, which gives you essence on Bone Splinter Explosion. This one is better though in the grand scheme of things, and you'll understand as we get to the boots, helmet, and the amulet. Now, we do temper Bone Spirit cooldown reduction, and that's another 15%, which is quite immense, and more bone critical strike damage. And that one gets multiplied up because of our golem sacrifice of 30%, more critical strike damage, which essentially gets the bone critical strike damage higher as well. Now, one of the key pieces is the Banished Lord's Talisman, and here you have two options. You could either play the Banished Lord's Talisman, which makes one of your core skills, and yes, Bone Spirit is a core skill now, to overpower after spending 275 essence, which is 2 clicks of your Bone Spirit skill. And then your overpower critical strikes, we do 100% critical strike damage, do another 60x multiplicative damage. So it's critical strike damage times overpower times life plus fortify, boop, 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 and then 60% up and grasping veins and everything going crazy together. Now, as an alternative, you can play a double cooldown reduction amulet, cooldown reduction and cooldown reduction. And that's the poor man's version if you don't have the Banished Lord's Talisman in good yet. The most important part about the Banished Lord is also resource generation, because every resource generation you get, let's say you're getting back 60 essence or 22 essence per cast, is increased by another 15% then, which gets higher with more tempering. Now, if we would put on the cooldown amulet, the interesting part is we can do this, right? You never run out of resource. This works way better with the explosion aspect that gives you more essence back on explosions, because now we have 0 cooldown happening. And you can truly go down on those 5.76 seconds on the Bone Spirit, right? And just get it away. If you choose to play this amulet to get the cooldown reduction so low, instead of going for 2 Bone Spirit cooldown temperings, you want to go for another Bone Spirit restores essence tempering that this one has, because then you get more resource back up in every cast to spam it away. This is the poor man's version. The Banished Lord's version is the one where damage goes crazy, because we're adding the Blood Moon Breaches, which gives us life, damage reduction from cursed enemies, amplified damage, even more damage, but enemies affected by at least one of your curses take 70x increased overpowered damage. And that's just simply incredible, because now we're gonna have the 60% increase on our overpower crits, but our overpowers are just increased by 70%. Just like that? Well, don't mind if I do, sir, ma'am. The gloves are running plus ranks to core skills, because more core skills is, well, more Bone Spirit. Critical strike damage and critical strike chance is mandatory, with the tempering on bone critical strike damage. Now for the chest, essence per second. And yes, this 8 essence per second times 155% because of the ring, right? Or 170% if we had fully up. So if my essence generation goes up, then the essence generation here gets boosted. And currently we're at 22.5 and it goes up to 52.5 per second essence regeneration. The Macabre skills boosts our Bone Spirit as well. And then I wanted to have barrier generation and definitely not crowd control duration. And that's needed for each time the Bone Storm damages an enemy, you gain barrier. And if you have barrier generation, you get, well, more barrier. Helmet on top of that too, more essence per second, plus maximum resource and cooldown reduction. Essence per second and cooldown reduction are mandatory. The maximum resource could be maximum life. Rather, needed a total armor tempering here to boost my armor up, and then damage reduction for you and your minions, which is damage reduction for me with a hardened bones. The boots are having ranks in Bone Spirit too, and that can be +4 and, well, +5 if greater affixed. This one currently has the unstoppable metamorphosis aspect on that we can always dash out of everything. Lastly, our offhand, which has a double cooldown reduction, critical strike chance and bonus damage. You need those double cooldown reductions to really get down to the 8-second in this build. And then we're playing the corpse tendrils for the super bonus damage and Bone Spirit explosion size. Because Bone Spirit can be quite small, but with the bonus of explosion size, it is suddenly an absolute rampaging tool of destruction. There's one aspect we're missing and I would like to have, and that's the aspect of Ultimate Shadows, which has your Bone Storm also be a darkness skill and deal shadow damage. Now, you do reduce the cooldown of this regardless if it's a shadow skill plus bone skill. What it does shadow damage over time now, which clings to the opponent and continuously replenishes your barrier. The problem is if a Bone Storm is a normal Bone Storm, it kind of hits once, barrier, hits once, barrier, hits once, barrier, everyone. But with the lingering effect of the shadow, it's like tick, 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 and that continuously replenishes your barrier. The problem is I have nothing to kick out. We do need the Ossified Essence key passive for the super bonus wombo combo triple dipple damage, resource, Bone Storm duration, and lastly the corpse tendrils. There's nothing I can throw out for this. I think the one thing you could get rid of is the Bone Spear critical strike chance if you manage to get enough critical strike chance to not have this. If you are at 80% critical strike chance or 70%, and then you have your Bone Storm bringing you up to 90%, plus the Bone Spirit skill for another 10%, you're good enough to not play this. If you get it up via your gear, then we could put it down to Ultimate Shadows again, and we are happy. That is a big gear question. End of the day, Ultimate Shadows makes this safer to play, but it's not mandatory to have. For our Book of the Dead sacrifices, the Skeletal Warriors are going out for resistance. Now, this resistance, if you have it well done over the Paragon board and such, could be your critical strike chance is increased by another 5%. In our case, this would bring us up to 78.2%, and that's actually 100% now with the Bone Storm. Ergo, I could get rid of the Swelling Curse. Now you do see though that my resistances are ruined, but I don't even have a single diamond in because I'm currently hogging skulls for armor, which means if I improve the Paragon board, it's an option. The thing is, if you just simply sacrifice your warriors for resistance, you don't have to waste any Paragon points for elemental resistance. And that's quite nice. Our mages are being sacrificed for overpowered damage. They're not being sacrificed for vulnerable damage or maximum essence. Overpower multiplier. That has us sitting at 1,400 critical strike damage and 757 overpower percentage. Lastly, the Golem goes out for the super critical strike damage multiplier. Now the Paragon board, and oh boy, we need to talk. Paragon board was tricky because we have to boost our overpower and critical damage. First glyph is territorial because we're always close and we want that bonus damage reduction easily activated here over a few dexterity nodes. Then we're going to the Bone Graft board because, well, we want the bonus essence and we're doing all the bone damage. Plus it is more maximum essence, which is more damage. We can also get the bone skill damage and some resistance up with the Amplify glyph. Very easy. That's nice. Then the bonus of 8% more life, 10%, 12% more life. Going into the left side for Bloodbath, increase overpower damage. That gives us another X 35% on everything we have been doing. With the Essence glyph on maximum critical strike damage bonus, some maximum life and damage while fortified, with even more overpowered damage taken here. This is not even accounted for in the video yet because it's more than ever before. Followed up by the Scent of Death for the damage reduction or bonus damage if there is no corpses, and that's actually more the bonus damage because there is no corpses. With the Dominate glyph on level 21 to give you the absolute super boost of overpower damage. needed. Lastly, the flash eater board and try to take every critical strike you can see with the corporal glyph for the 10% physical damage multiplier. What is it going to be? The Golem, Bone Spirit? Are you trying to push deep into the pit or just enjoying the speed farming? If you now want to know which uniques actually work with the Necro, there is a video for you, or the one-man Golem army, which will improve in the next couple of days even more. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.